All right. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Ethan Soloviev. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at HowGood, and I am excited to speak with you today. You should now be able to see my slides. All right. So, can supply chains be regenerative? This is a strategy for practical transformation. Here's the short answer. No, supply chains cannot be regenerative. That's my talk in 2 seconds there. Why can't supply chains be regenerative? It's because chains don't actually exist in living systems. Chains are not part of nature. Chains are a human mechanical construct, a product of the industrial age, and they're not actually how supply systems work. Whatever your company is, whether you are making food products, or whether you're a consultant, or whether you are working in textiles or computers, anything, you have materials that supply you, you have information, you have ideas that supply you. And if you think of them as a chain, then you're making a fundamental mistake of thinking of the world as a machine. The reason that we call them supply chains is because, terribly, we used to put people in chains and force them to produce our food, to produce our goods for us. And yet everyone still uses the word supply chain like it's no big deal. I think we have to break the chains and transform to a regenerative supply web in order to really create motion in the world. So I've crossed off chains at the top here. We can't regenerate supply chains, but supply itself can be regenerated. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I've learned so far about how we can do that. We're going to look at Kazakhstan and the apples there and how I got to regeneration, my own personal story. I'll walk through three capabilities that you need in order to regenerate supply. And then we'll touch some case studies from mega global brands to small innovative disruptors, give you some resources, and end with some calls to action. So a little bit about myself. I am a small-scale farmer in upstate New York in the USA. This is an aerial view of my 30-acre apple orchard. Primarily we grow apples, but we also produce sheep and lamb and shiitake mushrooms. And we're moving towards regenerative agriculture. We're moving towards something that has a net positive impact and even transforms the community around it. I'll tell you more as we go. This is where my heart and my passion is, and my hands are always in it. It was my birthday earlier this week. These are some photos of me up in the tree picking apples. One of my daughters on the right there in the trees. This is how we live because we have to have that inspiration from the farm, from the fruits, from the deliciousness of the land in order to do the work that I do in the world, which is actually working with some of the largest food companies to shift how they work and help make their supply systems regenerative. This all started for me almost 2 decades ago in Kazakhstan. What you're seeing here is out the window looking at the heavenly mountains, the Tian Shan mountains of Kazakhstan, some of the highest mountains in the world, some of them 24,000 feet high. In these mountains, in the foothills of the mountains, there's this funny thing that happens. There's forests there, but the forests are, they're not quite like any forest I've ever seen anywhere else. It turns out that the tallest tree in the forest, in the Tian Shan, that means heavenly mountains, the tallest tree in the forest is actually the apple tree. And so here I am, tiny me, I don't know, not quite 2 meters there, standing under an apple tree that is an ancient, maybe 40, 50, 60 foot tall apple tree, making an entire wild forest of fruit in the foothills of these mountains. And the apples are beautiful. I mean, look at this. This is a totally untouched. Nobody planted it. Nobody weeded it. Nobody sprayed it with pesticides or herbicides or fungicides. Nobody really did anything except I was able to walk through and harvest these incredible wild fruits. And some of them are so biodiverse. This was one that I found out there. If anyone asked me what my favorite apple is, here's a wild red-fleshed apple growing in these wild apple forests. And it turns out that those forests actually have other things too. They have pears, they have peaches, they have apricots, they have almonds, they have raspberries and strawberries and licorice and grapes. There's hops and grapes all growing together wild in this forest. And I began to think, maybe there's a different way we could do agriculture. Maybe there's a way we could grow food that would actually be biodiversity enhancing. Maybe there's a way that we could grow food that isn't just like reducing carbon footprint a little bit, but actually captures carbon in the soil, improves the soil, uplifts local communities. And so that early experience in Kazakhstan in these wild apple forests led me to this understanding of what we at HowGood call the impact spectrum, where a lot of agriculture in the world right now is extremely degenerative, right? It has a negative impact on people, it's oppressive, it has a negative impact on ecosystems, it's damaging, it's destroying. And yet we've made a lot of progress in the last 20, 30 years, especially. There's been some motion towards sustainability. We do a lot less harm now, and you could sort of think of sustainable as that kind of like net zero point if we could ever really get there. But given the amount of degeneration that's happened, sustainability is no longer enough. And so we have to step beyond sustainable and towards regenerative. We have to be able to increase the quality, the viability, the beauty, the deliciousness of each place that we're growing food or getting any form of supply in the world. And so in my work at HowGood, I help run a global data platform, the world's largest product and ingredient sustainability database focused on food that tracks along this spectrum from the most degenerative to the most regenerative. That's a little of my backstory. I'll give you a quick intro to HowGood and what we do, and then we'll dig into the meat of how you might start regenerating your system of supply. So HowGood is a sustainability intelligence platform. We have the world's largest product and ingredient database focused on food. We pull from a huge number of data sources and certifications, from the UN to the FAO to the USDA to different certifiers to international journals, peer-reviewed science, to specialty providers like Biodiversity International and their Agrobiodiversity Index, all into one massive structured, harmonized database with 33,000 ingredients, chemicals, and materials. And what that means is that for any ingredient, this just happens to be a tomato here in Florida, we know a huge amount about it. We know what the water usage is. Okay, it's pretty humid, kind of tropical there. Pesticide usage, not good. This is really actually quite bad on pesticides. Labor risk, also not good. But what if you grew that tomato somewhere else? What if you grew it here in California? Well, here it's going to be much worse on water, but better on pesticides and better on labor risk. And if you do a certification, like an organic certification, that will improve some things, but it doesn't necessarily help the farm workers, doesn't necessarily help water. What if we get from somewhere else? Well, that doesn't quite look right. What if we get from Canada? Oh, Canada looks good. Good on water, good on labor risk, but then you realize they're growing in greenhouses. They're using fossil fuels to heat the greenhouses. They might not even have soil in the greenhouses, and so you can't just use 3 points of data. You need a holistic picture. And so HowGood in our database, we look at every different facet. So we'll also look at the carbon footprint, the biodiversity, the soil health, and over 100 different metrics for each location that any ingredient is grown, which of course for the tomato, it's not just these, it's all of these. And then globally, it's all of these. And most of our partners, they're not selling tomatoes, they make a product. So we have to do this for the tomato and the sugar and the oil and all of the other ingredients. And this is what makes the world's largest product and ingredient sustainability database, with over 2 million products assessed at the individual finished good level. And because we've worked with major retailers like Ahold Delhaize and others, we sit at this spot where we can help look at the entire supply system. It's not a chain, it's a network, it's a web of relationships. And so we help, suppliers from the Ingredions and other large suppliers of the world communicate with brands like General Mills, Danone, Kraft Heinz, and help them communicate information to the retailers of the world. With this web of data, we can really see what it will take to move towards regeneration. So that's a bit of my story from Kazakhstan and the wild apple forest to my farm to what HowGood's doing as a whole. But what I really want to offer to you today is more about a strategic framework. There's 3 capabilities that must be developed and alive in order for you to regenerate whatever supply is for your business. So I've tried to think about all the different businesses that you're running, all the different brands that you have, and think about some things that are not specific to food, but could be applied no matter what you're doing to think about supply. Here are the 3 capabilities as an overview, and then we'll move into some case studies for each of them. So the first capability is you have to be able to uplift your paradigm. You can't just start where you are and keep going in the same way. You need to shift and change to a different way of seeing the world. The next thing you need to do is have data-driven design. You need to not just be acting, putting out fires, running, doing the next thing. There's lots of good work to do, but if you don't design what you're going to do ahead of time, you won't have the capability to achieve the outcomes that you're looking for. And then finally, we want to network action. So we've got to act, we have to execute, we have to do things, but you want to do them so that you're not the only one, so that you're collaborating with a network, with that supply web. We're breaking the chains, but reweaving a web of connectivity to act for the good of your supply system. So number one, let's dig in a little deeper. In order to uplift paradigms, we have to know what different paradigms there are out there. And what I'm going to present to you is really well written up by one of my mentors, Carol Sanford, a giant in the regenerative business and regenerative thinking space. It's written up in several of her books. I'll also, at the end, be able to share a link to one of my papers that lays this out in detail for agriculture. So here are 4 paradigms. The first is what business as usual is extract value, just trying to get a bunch for yourself. How do I hit my bottom line? How do I serve my stakeholders? How do I get what I want? Most business and most agriculture and most supply is very much in this space. Everybody's trying to extract value and get what they want for themselves. The next level is do less harm. In this paradigm, you're saying, well, I don't want to be quite so bad. I want to reduce the plastic in this water bottle by 20%. I want to reduce my carbon emissions by 10%. I want to make it a little more efficient so it's not quite so bad. That's fine. There's a lot of benefits to that instead of extract value, but it's not enough. The next is do good. And most of the people who are looking at sustainability, most of them are thinking about, how do I do good? Can I have a mission-driven business? Can I have a purpose? Can I do something good in the world? And that's fine, that's wonderful, but a lot of times it's still coming from yourself. And who gets to decide what good is? Do I get to decide? Does she get to decide? Who decides? And then when I know what good is in this paradigm, I find myself evangelizing. I'm telling other people, well, this is what good is. I have a mission. I'm like a missionary, right? I'm going to go evangelize and tell you what is good and how you should be doing good too. Where we want to get to is this final paradigm, which is the paradigm of regenerate life. And here, you're not just trying to do good, you're actually trying to regenerate, which means to be born, to grow again, right? It's to rebirth, to see something new that has never existed before, and try to create that on the farm, in your business, in your community, in the world. We're actually seeking to improve the capacity to evolve everybody's ability, not just to do some good here, there, and the other place. And so when you're working at Regenerate Life, you can actually see a whole system, you can see a whole country, or a whole watershed, or a whole city, and think about, how do I regenerate everyone's capacity to do good and to improve that which is around them. So my case study for this paradigm is a company that maybe you've heard of. They're somewhat big, General Mills. And nothing I'm telling you here has anything to do with my relationship with General Mills. This is all publicly available information from their great work out in the world. So several years ago, General Mills said that they were going to do regenerative agriculture on 1 million acres. This was way back. This was the first company to make a big commitment in this regard. And the way they went about doing it was very much from this paradigm of not just, I'm just doing this for a marketing, extract value. They weren't just saying, well, how do we make it a little less bad on farms? They weren't just saying, well, let's improve the soil on farms. They were saying, let's regenerate whole communities, whole landscapes across many states, across many countries, so that those places can be resilient to drought, so that the farmers can have greater livelihoods, and so that the soil can sequester more carbon, which will affect global climate change positively. And so General Mills didn't set out, they didn't go and just work with single farmers and try to buy their stuff. They actually started to invest in a whole life shed, a whole area, a whole spot with many different farmers, even farmers they weren't going to buy from, Even farmers that might not necessarily, supply them and be directly in their supply chain, they begin to think of the supply web. And if you could lift and support all the different farmers in an area, you're much more likely to succeed with regenerative agriculture, because farmers need to learn from each other about what they're doing. So their investments in regenerative agriculture have come from this paradigm of regenerate life in a whole place, not just how do I extract value for marketing or for my supply chain. If you want to hear more about General Mills, I have an interview with their Chief Sustainability Officer that's up on the HowGood website, and others with their head of regenerative agriculture, who really talks through, and you can hear the regenerative paradigm thinking there. And if you want a particular resource, there's the Paradigms of Agriculture white paper, which I can share the link to, which goes through those 4 levels I talked about. Okay, let's talk about this regenerative capability number 2, which is data-driven design. So here, my case study is actually going to be HowGood itself, and I'm going to do a slightly different share here if it works. To show you some of the massive data both that we have available in the food system, but also that others have in whatever it is you're working on. So here I'm going to show just for a moment HowGood's platform, which is for food, but gives you the information across a huge number of different metrics to understand the impact of whatever you're working with. So let's say, we're General Mills and we're working with wheat, so I'm going to pull up wheat here. Or let's say you're making a chocolate bar and you need some cocoa powder or cocoa butter, or let's say you're making a drink and you need some sugar. All of these, we can get those ingredients in there, and then we can immediately see a huge amount of information about those. So for wheat, we can tell you exactly what the carbon footprint is of producing wheat, and it's much worse if you're producing cocoa butter. You can see what is the labor risk associated with any of these. So here we see the labor risk of cocoa butter is quite high, but for sugarcane in many places, actually not so high. We can see the impacts on biodiversity. We can see how much land is used and if animal welfare is affected. Not only can you see the ingredients, but you can also look and say, where are the different locations where I would get that from? So here's wheat, here's all the different places I could get wheat from Belgium or China and Germany, and we'll see a different carbon footprint for each one of them and different metrics in terms of water or soil health, etc. You can also then look into a particular place. Let's say we wanted to get wheat from, I don't know if we have Turkey in here. No, it doesn't look like it. Let's say we want to get wheat from Germany. It will also then tell you, is it better to do certified organic or regenerative organic? Will that actually improve the metrics along the way? So before making a decision, before I go to design a product, if I'm making a yogurt product, I actually have a blueberry yogurt that I really love here. If I'm going to make a blueberry yogurt, instead of just going and buying something and starting to go, I can look at it and see what are the impacts of creating this product. What if, if I have sugarcane, or if I have blueberries in it, what are each of their impacts on carbon, on water, on biodiversity? Where am I sourcing it from? What if I make changes? Could I make the impacts better for any of these? And so I'm designing, I'm thinking, I'm figuring out, which metrics can I achieve? How do I compare to the rest of the industry before I make a decision to produce the product itself? So here I'm really using data, and this is a particular example from food, but for any industry that you're in, you can find that source of data to drive your design and think about the supply system, think about how you can actually improve impact by what you purchase, instead of just going for what's easiest or what will get you the best financial bottom line value. And then finally, the third capability that we want to aim for is to network action. And for this, I want to use the example of the almond project. And again, this is in food, but it combines a number of different organizations. A small company called Simple Mills, another company called Daily Harvest. Both are really cool, up and coming, exciting, disruptive brands for their particular industry. Another brand called Capello's that is making gluten-free pastas out of almonds. And so all together, they worked with a California almond distributor and a land trust for consulting, and they formed the Almond Project, which is bringing regenerative agriculture to scale of hundreds of acres. You can read about this at the Almond Project website here. but together. They're not just going at it alone. They're not trying to figure out, how do I get what I want? They're using that regenerative paradigm to say, look, if we all work together, we can A, have more investment capital to work with the farmers, but then we have a bigger story to tell. Back to some of Lola's points about marketing, what's real and what connects. When we're collaborating, we have a bigger story to tell. We have more people that we're connecting with. We have more that we're serving and lifting up through the interconnection of our companies together. And so you don't just act, you seek to network your action with other players in your supply system. You look upstream and you say, who am I getting my supply from? And eventually, where is that coming out of the earth somewhere? And then you also look downstream and you say, who are my customers? Who am I selling to? Who are they selling to? And can we get them all linking up and collaborating together to have a greater outcome for regeneration? So there you have the three key capabilities that I think you need to develop if you want to regenerate supply. And here are some particular calls to action that I would invite for each of you in your businesses. So one, to uplift the paradigm is not a small thing. I can't show you a framework on a slide and it's done. Maybe you had a little inkling of an aha, some crack in the current paradigm you're working from, but that's not enough. It will go away as soon as I get off the screen. If you actually want to transform how you're thinking and transform how your business works, you need to be part of a community. Sustainable Brands does that to some extent, and we can all go further towards regeneration. One place you can go and look for some of these communities of practice is at carolsanford.com. There's others as well. I actually run a community of practice that's on regeneration, but it's about parenting and familying, and how do I bring the regenerative paradigm to working as a family. We'll launch some other ones in this coming year on food, regenerative food and agriculture, and then I'm really interested to do one that's on regenerative politics, that says, how do you take this regenerative thinking but apply it to the realm of politics, which is so fractured and divisive in the world. So that's my call to action for the first capability. Join a community of regenerative practice where you can go further. The next one, for network action, like I said, you have to start collaborating with your suppliers and your customers. Even just choose one, your most important supplier, and choose one, your most important customer, and sit all three of you down at the table and say, what could we do together? What could we generate for our supply system that would be better than what we're currently doing? Network your action as opposed to going it on your own. And then finally, use data-driven design. There's so many different sources, especially have actual materials that you're using in your business. You know, HowGood has stuff, but you can look at TraceGains and SourceMap and many other players who will provide you the data and information you need on impact, on ecological, on social, on cultural impact. So you're taking that into account alongside the financial decisions that you're making. I have no idea what the time is, but that is what I was hoping to share with you today. So I will wrap. Thanks to the team for inviting me to speak at Sustainable Brands. Stop saying supply chain, break the chains, and let's see what we can regenerate together. Thank you.